All right, welcome everybody to another Wednesday evening webinar with Stacey Roshan from the Bullis School in Potomac, Maryland. Stacey will be joining us soon for another great webinar on Pear Deck. That's a great software program that's used in conjunction with Wacom tablets, and we're excited to have Stacey with us again. So we'll let the room fill up for a couple of seconds, and then we'll introduce Stacey. So hang on. And just a quick reminder while the room is filling up, Think 21, the Wacom Edu Summit. You'll see our new logo up there. The Wacom Edu Summit will begin on March 18th, I believe, and you're all welcome to attend. There'll be lots of great sessions, both live and recorded, so please tune in on March 18th. So that's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's get started. Stacey is joining us again. We've had a lot of questions from teachers coming in about Pear Deck. Pear Deck is a wonderful, wonderful software program that works with Wacom tablets, and Stacey has been using it in her classroom for many years. It provides real-time insight into student understanding so that teachers can respond and adapt to students' needs. So it's a really, really cool program. And Stacey this evening is going to run through it with us. If you have questions, please put them in the Zoom question section. Do not put them in the chat. We prefer that you put them in the question section, and I will answer them as they, or I will look at them and send them to Stacey as they come in. So, and we'll save questions for the end. So welcome, Stacey, and take it away.
Thank you for the warm introduction, and thank you all for being here this evening to join. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you some of my experiences using Pear Deck over the years, pairing it up with my Wacom device, how I've used it in my teaching and in working with others. So if you would like to connect with me, please, the easiest way to connect with me is through Twitter. My Twitter handle is @BuddyXO. If you are a Twitter user, I'd love to chat with you more there. So definitely connect with me. If you're not, and if you're looking for any more information, contact form, all that, my blog is techiemusings.com, and there's a contact form on that. Also, my email address is on there, and you can find more about me there. And I also have written a book called Tech with Heart, where I share a lot of kind of my goals in integrating technology into my teaching and my classroom. And the biggest part for me is how do I get to know my learners on a more personal level? And Pear Deck has been one of the tools that has been the very best in my teaching experience in doing that. And so that's why I'm so excited to be able to share with you some of the strategies that I've picked up over the years and things that have worked well for me and my classes. So to get started today, I am going to let you join the Pear Deck. If you would like to, then you can interact with me this evening. So I'm going to just leave this screen up here for a couple of minutes and allow people to join. And if you are just wanting to kind of take this in this evening and you don't really want to interact, that's fine. You can definitely just watch. I know that some people prefer that, but if you would like it to be a little bit more interactive, please go ahead and log in using this code. So you would go to joinpd.com and then type in this code with no spaces. So UQSVRC, just type the whole thing in without any spaces. So I'm going to just give it another couple seconds to let people join. And I'll put this code up a little bit later too. If you are watching and then you decide you want to join in a little bit, you can do that. Okay, I see people actively joining, so. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and press start class. and begin. If you were not able to get the code yet, it is always going to be in the top right-hand corner the whole time I'm talking, so you can join at any point. So for me, it really is about this idea of like, how can we engage all of the learners in our classroom? Pear Deck has been such a solution for me on this topic, because it's not just about the first person to raise their hand. It's not just about the student who's going to raise their hand in the first place. Pear Deck for me has provided a platform for all students to be able to contribute their voice, their ideas, whatever they're thinking, and that thought process along the way. So it's not just, you know, even if they don't have the final answer yet, what are you thinking in this moment? They're able to show me that work. So I'm going to talk a lot about how I pair up my Pear Deck with the Wacom device. But I'm going to start with just explaining several different options that you can choose from. So I'm going to start with this one in the left, the Intuos Tablet. And so that's this one. I have it right here. And this, I have it starred on my slide because this is actually the one that I love using in the classroom, using it with Pear Deck personally. And the reason for this is it's the option that is wireless. So I have the Wacom Intuos. This is a small size, and this is the Bluetooth enabled one. And what's beautiful about this is that it's wireless, and I can just walk around the room and use this. So this is a slate style. So that means that, you know, this is not a screen. It's always this blank slate, and I have to look up at like the monitor, or if I'm in the classroom, I have to look up at the projector to see where I'm writing. And this does take a little bit of getting used to. I'd say it takes at least a month for you to feel real comfortable with it. But once you do, this is a great option. Throw it in your bag if you change classrooms, which is something that I do. I teach in multiple classrooms, but it's nice to have this to move around. And this works like a giant mouse pad. So if I'm writing on like the top left of the screen, it corresponds to the top left of my monitor. The bottom right would be the bottom right of my monitor. And I use the pen, so I have the pen precision. So that's this one. Then the next one that I'm going to show is Wacom's newest device, which is the one by Wacom. And this is actually also the small size, and it is the same size, the same drawing area, okay, as the Intuos. But the difference with this one is that I do have to plug it in. Right now I don't have the wire just so I could hold it up more easily. You do plug this one in. This is the one with the red backing, okay? So this is the middle one. What's beautiful about this is that it is Chromebook compatible. So this one is the device, if you have a Chromebook or if you want to be able to use this in the classroom with your students, this is the one to get. It's Chromebook compatible. It's also the lowest price point. So I'll talk to you a little bit today too about how my students use Wacom tablets. I'm very lucky to have a full class set of Wacom tablets. If I was suggest what you would get for students to have a class set, this is the one I would absolutely get. No question about it. This is the one I would get because it would meet the needs of all my students, because my students have PCs, Macs, and Chromebooks, and this one works with all of them. So the last one I'm going to get into is the pen display. And so this one, you'll see the difference is that it is actually a display. You see, I can mirror. I have it mirrored right now, but I can also use it as a second display, like a monitor. So this is great in the times of remote learning because you can actually have two different views. I could have two different screens. I could have just on my like computer monitor, all my students, and then whatever I want to be writing on, I can be doing the screen share off of this. So it gives me a whole second display. And this is much, much larger than the small size. Hopefully you can see that. So much larger than that. This is 13 inches. So it's a beautiful writing area. Now I use the pen display for, I will say that I use it the most. I use the pen display for making all my flipped classroom videos. I use it for grading student work. It's comfortable for me because, you know, I use it a ton. I mean, I use this thing all day, every day. So this is obviously a lot more expensive, the pen display. So, you know, there's a lot of things to consider, and I just want to be like totally upfront and explaining why I might choose each of these three options. I mean, I have all three of them right here at my table. You're not going to probably be able to get all three of them, but I hope that this helps you understand the thought process behind which one you might go-to. So if it's really important for you to be able to walk around the classroom wirelessly with a device, I would say, you know, go with the Intuos tablet. But if you're like me, like if I could just choose one of them to invest in, I would get the Wacom One, because that is a second display. Even though it's a higher price point, it is something that's going to last me for a really long time because it just plugs into my computer. So it is a second display, plugs into my computer. I can use it with any of the applications that I'm already using. You know, it's not like I have to run separate apps on it or anything like that. And it feels like writing on a piece of paper. And when I have a device that feels so great and comfortable, I use it all the time. So I make videos all the time because I have it plugged in. When I'm making my videos, I have, you know, a speaker plugged in. Sorry, I meant a microphone. I also have this plugged in, and I'm doing a screen recording. So it's no problem for me to have to be plugged in. Anyway, I think I've explained enough. I'm going to move on, but if you have questions at the end, please do ask them. So let's get into what is Pear Deck. So if you haven't used Pear Deck before, it is an add-on for your Google Slides. It also works with PowerPoint Online, but I'm going to stick to what I use. So I use it with Google Slides. So that's what I'm going to explain to you today. If you are a Microsoft school though, just know that an option is available for you. It works very similarly. It just would be an add-on for your PowerPoint instead of an add-on for your Google Slides. So the first thing you would do is you would go to your add-ons menu in Google Slides, and you would get an add-on, and you would get this Pear Deck add-on. I'm going to show you how that works in just a moment, but I first want to start with just like a little teaser of how this works in my classroom. So I've used the Wacom tablets with Pear Deck for years now. I was actually teaching an online version of AP Calculus for several years, and this is exactly how it worked in that classroom. So all of my students had a device. I have a class set of these even when we're face-to-face. So each of my students just takes one at the beginning of class, and then they return it at the end of class, so that I just have one set and we're using that for a full class. For my online students, they all had a device that they had at home as part of the class. This was a part of their materials that they needed for the class because we used it every time we got on a Zoom session. And so what I would do is I would create a warm-up, and I would be able to see, just like you're seeing on the screen right here, all those answers coming in real time. As students were working, I was able to see how they were writing. And what is so valuable to me in this process is that, especially for my online students, I never had the opportunity to see them in class. You know how you like look over a student's shoulder and you get so much information about how they're thinking about the problem and about where they're getting stuck, if they're going in circles, if they're working very linearly through the process. Like, where are you getting stuck right now? There's only so much information we can get when a student turns in their work at the end of class, right? They turn in their completed work. It's like, great, but I didn't get to see where you were struggling. Using Pear Deck combined with the Wacom tablet, I'm able to see all of that information, because as students are writing in real time, I can see what they're doing. I can see if a student is struggling to get started. I can see if they're getting stuck in the middle. I can see all of that. So this is one of the ways. I just wanted to give you a preview of kind of what this looks like in my classroom. What's also great is that I can project student work. So right now I have like 4 answers that I'm showing you here, but I'm going to show you later when we dig in that I can pull up just one piece of student work, and we can talk about if it's correct, if it's incorrect, and it's anonymous, so that I'm not calling an individual student out, and we can really learn, or students can learn from one another. It really puts that emphasis on the peer-to-peer learning. All right, so let's talk about how we get started. So there's a free version, there is a paid version. I always get a lot of questions about this, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to be talking a lot about the drawing type slide today with you guys, and the drawing is a paid feature. So I do want to just tell you that up front. Pear Deck has very simple pricing. It is free for the basic, but for a yearly account, it is $150 per year. And then you can get a site-wide subscription. So maybe your school already has a subscription. We do at my school. So every teacher has access, every student has access. Something else to know, if you get a new Wacom tablet, then it actually comes with a free subscription to Pear Deck. So they've partnered up. So that's something else to know that you can take advantage of. But as you can see here, one of the things, the draggable and the drawing response types are paid features in Pear Deck. So that is important, especially as I'm going to be talking a lot about the drawing feature with you today, since we're talking about how to use it with your Wacom tablet. So again, as I was showing you before, Pear Deck is just, it works with PowerPoint, but also you just install it from the Chrome web store. If you're using it with Google Slides, you would install it with your Microsoft add-on, and that's it. It's a one-time little install. You all can do this now or after this webinar today for free. You can join this, add this for free. Again, you'll have some limitations in the features if you're not paying yet. So you just go to the add-on menu and you would then open Pear Deck once you've installed it for the first time. So from there on in, that's all you do is you open Pear Deck, and what it does is it opens it in the sidebar right here. So right on the side, you're going to get all the interactivity options. So before I dive any further and show you more about the building experience, let me allow you to experience this from the student end. And if you have decided that you want to join our Pear Deck today and you haven't yet, go ahead and do that now. So you can go to joinpd.com and just go ahead and type in this code UQSVRC. And see a couple more people joining in. So again, it's right here at the top right. So go ahead and play. You can see if you can get yourself out of this maze. If you have a Wacom tablet, go ahead and use it. If you don't, just use your mouse. Let's see how people are doing. I'm going to show you how real time this is. So I'm going to do the grid layout here. Oh, we already got some people who are already out of the tunnel. Great. So you can see how real time this shows up, and there are multiple views here. So what I can do is I can have the grid layout to kind of get a sense of what everybody's doing right now. See if anybody's stuck, anybody needs help, somebody's told me they won already, love it. I can do this overlaid layout. I can see, do we have the same pattern? We could discuss this. So this is the overlaid layout. We can see everybody stacked one on top of one another. You can imagine that this would be great in a math class for graphing, great in an art classroom for like labeling or pointing something out, even, you know, any classroom where you want to do labeling, great. And then we can also use a list layout. And I like to use a list layout, like I was saying before, to pull up a piece of student work so that instead of it just, it's going to be my screen share or my projector in the classroom, but it takes that eye off of me at the front of the room and puts it back on the student because their work is now up on the board without them having to come up to the front of the room, without me having to call that student out, especially if I'm going to highlight. I usually like to find one that's correct. I usually like to also find one that's incorrect. And I'm trying to find one that's incorrect right now. So like, you know, maybe pull this one up on the board and we can talk about it. And say, yes, you did it very creatively right here, right? But just be able to chat about this. And right now, this person, we don't know who this person is, but we can talk about the incorrect response and we can talk about how to help this person get to where they need to go. And that is such a valuable piece in our learning process. And also helping students understand, especially in my classroom, I teach AP calculus, you know, like mistakes are such a valuable part of this learning process. We are all going to make a ton of mistakes before we get to where we want to be, before we get to the right answer. Sometimes I don't know the right right answer at the beginning. And I like to be able to share that with students and make that mistake making a part of our classroom culture. And so I'm able to do this in a safer environment because, again, I can pull student work up to the board. I can pull up an incorrect response. I can then pull up, a correct response, and we can talk about it too. And again, I'm not calling any individual student out. What I am doing in this instance, though, is I'm allowing students to talk up. So normally in my classroom, I would put a response up on the board like this and say, who wants to talk about this? And so I would be hearing from maybe the student whose work it was, but just as likely from somebody else in the class. So again, how do we celebrate the different voices in our classroom? How do we hear from the kid who is going to be the one whose best work is going to be when they're able to draw it in the Pear Deck? But how also do I hear from the person whose voice shines when I call on them and they can vocally contribute? And to me, this has been a really valuable piece of that puzzle in figuring that out. So you might be asking, before I was saying I get really valuable insight into who's getting stuck and where they're getting stuck. And then Stacey, you were just talking so long about how this is all anonymous. If you have the paid version of Pear Deck, you can, there's these 3 dots over here. You can open the dashboard in a new window or in a new device. And what that does is it opens up a teacher dashboard with names attached. So that would be how I could get insight into what individual students are doing. And I would be able to see their names actually attached to that. So again, that is a paid feature. You only get that dashboard when you have an actual premium license. All right, let's move on. Let's do some grammar, a little grammar challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you a couple more features. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this in a minute, but let me show you from the student end. So I'm logging in as a student right now. I'm going to break this down later in the webinar, okay, what I just did. But I just want to show you, for those of you who are joining from home, who have decided not to join our Pear Deck tonight, let me just show you what you see on the student end. So you can make your bigger and smaller, the pen size, just like that. You can change the color, just like that. You can actually use a highlighter. So say that, you're reading this and, you want to highlight certain things, or maybe you want to say add punctuation is what you want to do, okay? And then I can change it to an actual pencil. And after we left grandma, mommy, and I, so then you could start putting in the punctuation. And just like that, you could change colors if you wanted to as you're going. Let me just show you how the pen size works. So you can make it bigger. And then what you can also do is you can use text if you need to be able to type anything out. So it is a mix of handwriting and text if you need that, and if your students need that. So we can type, and we can change the color of that typing, and we can change the size of that, just like that. So even if you have a worksheet that you want students to finish filling out, you can easily do that. All this is available right here with the drawing type slide. Let's see what everybody said. I'm going to press continue, and I'm going to show, so nothing shows until I press show responses. So now I can go one at a time. We can see the different responses. I can also look at this grid layout, so I could see more at a time. Scroll through them a little bit faster if I want to locate something or see if we have any problem spots, or if we already have class consensus, I can get a very quick snapshot like that. And then I have the overlaid layout if I want to see everything stacked on top of one another. So that's really nice. Again, as everybody's working, if a couple people can just continue drawing right now, then we can see how real time this happens. Do I see anybody scribbling yet? There we go. So you can see how real time this happens. As people are scribbling, I can see that happening in real time. There's no submit button through this. It just happens as people are writing. Oh, I see everybody scribbling now. There's probably a little bit of delay in when I'm broadcasting and when I see it here, so that's probably why. All right, let's move on. So I'll give you one more here. Just this one's fun. The student said the teacher is amazing. How are you going to put some grammar on that? And for this one, what I want to show you is this lock screens, and I'm going to give everybody 30 seconds for this one. Sometimes I want to make sure I give enough wait time, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds. So what this looks like on the student end is they also see the countdown timer, just like that. And if they move their mouse over it, sometimes kids love doing that, it moves that out of the way. And I'll show you what happens after our time is up. So this is a student end again. After the time is up, it says your teacher has locked responses for this slide. And the value of this is that it brings the attention of the class back up to the board. So at this moment, it's like, okay, we're going to talk about the answers right now. So look up at the board. And I can unlock the responses at any time so that students can draw again, but I can keep them locked if I want them focused on the board. And then I can show responses. And that's when we can talk about the different ways that people answered this. So this is an interesting, right? Because the student said the teacher is amazing versus the student said the teacher is amazing. So we can talk about the different responses that we get. Again, how can we celebrate all different ideas? This is a great way to do that. Obviously, this is just a funny little grammar challenge, but my point is just how can we see all the different ways that students might be approaching a problem? Pear Deck is a wonderful way to celebrate that. Okay, so got to give you one math challenge. I'm a math teacher here. We got to have fun with one little math challenge. Can you make this equal to 24? You can drag the little icons to make 24. And this one, I'm going to show the responses as you're working. So if you're stuck, you can get help from one another. And I'm using the overlaid response layout here so we can see if we have similar answers, if we have different answers, what's going on. This one's fun to watch. Cool. So we've got, oh, I think mine's delaying a little bit. I have a lot of dots being scrolled around. But add those numbers with the parentheses and then multiply by 2. That's a great way to solve this. So add the 8 and the 4 and 2 times that quantity. Okay, let's move along. So actually, let me show you one other thing, because say that we were doing this problem and say that, you know, I was like, oh, wow, yeah, let's talk about this. And I really want at this moment in time, the ability to just write on this slide. You see how I've made it. I'm going to move over to the student end. This is a draggable question type. So all I can do, even though I'm logged in as a student, is I can just move around these draggable things. But what if, again, I want to do a little bit of instruction on the slide. I want to be able to just explain this concept a little bit further to my class. It's like I want to pull up a whiteboard on the moment. I can actually do that in Pear Deck. So what I can do is on any question, I can change the question type. So I can press that new prompt button. Let me do it a little bit slower. You see at the bottom right, it says new prompt. So I can press that new prompt button, and then you can choose from a variety of different slide types. So you could ask a question like, what do you wonder about today's topic? All these that they've pre-programmed for you. Okay. And then I could just like have a blank whiteboard if I wanted to on this screen. But what I'm going to actually do for this one is I want to go to the third screen here, which is the same question, but allows me to change the question type on this slide. It doesn't throw away the answer that I just gave. It just adds on. So here I'm going to choose drawing. So let me show you what that does. Now I have the drawing tools. So now I can go ahead and pick up my tablet. So I'm going to pick up my tablet, this one right here, so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to say, you know, let's see. So maybe we said to ourselves, what is 8 plus 4? And I could be pointing that out. And now, oops, let me get my pen. I can draw it. Obviously, I had my really thick pen, so let me change that up. Let's make it thinner. 8 plus 4, so then I can ask my students to kind of think about that. Obviously, I wouldn't be holding this up. I'm just showing you how real time it works. They would just be looking at my screen, and they would see that, and then we can, you know, finish solving the problem, and we can talk about this. I can change the colors easily, so I can say, what is this, you know, and we can talk about what this is first, and I can scribble on it. Even if you had a writing passage, you know, like if you're an English teacher and you wanted to be able to mark that up and help students read it. So like drag the symbols, whatever you want to be able to highlight or mark up, you can do that. So a lot of times I get a question of like, how do I mark up my Google Slides presentation? Because like in Google Slides, there are no inking tools, right? There's no ability to ink up my Google Slides. So but when you pair it with Pear Deck, now I can, because what I can do is just make it a drawing slide type. I can make every slide a drawing slide type. And then I have the ability to draw through this student view. I can draw on absolutely any slide that I'm on. And this is what I do. This is how I teach my class. This is how I teach my online class. Also in the classroom, I teach it like this. And then when I'm all done, I also am able to publish this in a way that I get an answer key for any student who might be absent, and I can share it with them, all the annotations that I've made during class. So this has been my solution there. So as you saw, I added that. So you can see that I have now 2 slides. I have one where it was still the draggable. It didn't delete that slide, but when I added that new prompt, it just inserted a new slide into my presentation that I'm doing with you today so that I capture both answers here. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm ready to take it up a little bit of a notch, which is just the things that I've already shown you, but I'm going to just say it a little bit slower now because this is definitely like not 101 anymore. We're into like 301 territory, but I want to make sure that I emphasize it because this is where the magic of pairing your Pear Deck up. I keep saying pairing and then pairing, of using Pear Deck with the Wacom Tablet. I think the power really comes in well utilizing these more advanced or creative uses of the features that are available. So the first one is that new prompt button. So you'll see here that this question that I have right now is not a question. It's just a slide. It's a blank slide. So students viewing it, they don't have any interactivity available. But say, as we're doing this in class, I'm like, you know what? Let's break this down. What does this mean? All I do is I go to new prompt. And again, this time I was already on the 3rd screen, but you could have a little check with them. Like, you know, are you doing all right now? You could add this in, like drag your dot to tell me how you're feeling. You could add that in, which I think I'm going to do next. Go over to the next slide and, you know, I could ask a question on the spot, like, is this true or false? Do you agree or disagree? I can ask that on the spot. But this last screen is what I use the most. I love it. Is on the fly, I can say, you know what? I need this to be a drawing slide type. And I can just click it. And now all of you would also be able to draw anywhere on the slide. So that's, I think I didn't progress. Now we can all just draw right on this slide. So that's a big pro tip for me. That's how I kind of am able to whiteboard right within Pear Deck. Okay, let me ask you before I move on to the next thing, is there anything that you're like, oh my God, I need help with right now? So I'm going to give you this, please write a response question type. So go ahead, if there's anything that's bugging you so far, let me know before I move on to how you log in as a student. How do you handle animations in Pear Deck? So you can do some animations in Pear Deck. So like some of the transitions, you are not able to capture them, but the tip is that you want to install the Pear Deck Power Up if you don't have that yet. So if you do have it, you'll see this little icon in your add-ons menu. So that's the Pear Deck Power Up, and that's a separate install that you need to get. And once you do that, then it will like play live videos, and any animated GIFs that you have, it would play them. But if you use some of the like transition features, like fly-in text and stuff like that, Pear Deck doesn't support that because it kind of like flattens it when it makes it into the Pear Deck. But my first tip is make sure that the Pear Deck Power Up is installed, and that works when you're in the instructor pace mode. Good. What is the max number of students per session? I have experienced Pear Deck slowing down when I go over 100. So like when I'm doing a presentation, I have over 100 people on, especially with the draggable slide types like that. The draggables, when I have too many draggables and I have too many people on, that can slow down. But otherwise, I don't think there's an official max. I would just say probably keep it under 100 people. If you have multiple sections of students, then what you can do is you can just make one Google Slides presentation. So I just make one and say that you all are my A block, and I already have you started, okay? What I can do to launch it with B block is I use the same Google Slides. I don't need to make a copy of my slides or anything. But what I'll do is I'll press start lesson again, and I'll start another lesson with my B block class. So I keep the blocks separated in that way. So usually then you don't run into an issue with having too many students on one deck at one time. And then to manage things, to keep things very clear, what you can do is go down to these three dots at the bottom, and you can name the session. So if I wanted to call this, you could call it A block, but I'm going to say Wacom and Pear Deck webinar. And then when I save that name and I go back and look at the responses, I'll have them all separated. So I would have A block, B block, C block because of the name that I have there. How many responses can you see at a time? Well, I guess it's kind of like this. So it depends on how long it is. But the other thing is that you can use like the shift minus sign. And sometimes I will do that to make it smaller so that I can see more things at a time, just like that. So shift minus is of course just zooming in and out in Google Chrome itself, but that works really nicely in Pear Deck. So that's a little tip. And you can reset the screen back to normal when you're ready to move on. So the grid view though is the best way to see more student responses at a time. So I think that answers that question also. Okay, move on to the next thing. So this is one of my favorite tips, and what I do all the time is I also join as a student. So if you have, so this is also the beauty of, if you have this second screen, what I do is I join as a student on just my Wacom 1. And then on my main laptop, instead of having screens mirrored, I have it as a second display. When I say second display, that's just like if you're in the classroom and you have a projector or you have a second monitor at home. You know how you have two options where like you can extend your monitor or you can mirror the display. Mirror display means the same thing on both, but you can also extend the monitor. So I extend the monitor, and then on my Wacom 1, I'm logged in as a student. And then on my actual laptop, I'm doing the screen share, and I'm just showing the teacher dashboard, or not the teacher dashboard, the projector view like I've been showing here. So I can keep things separated, and I just have more retail space instead of having to switch tabs back and forth. Switching tabs back and forth, though, is not a big deal either. Like I have no issue with it. I do it on. So how I do this, the easiest way to do it is what I did very quickly before, but I said I'd do it a little bit slower. So I just go to this top right, just like I was getting students a code. And then I find that the easiest way to do this is instead of having to type in the whole code, I just give students a link. I just click that button, it copies it into my clipboard. Then I open a new tab and I paste that, and that's it. Then I'm logged in. I don't want to log in again as a student, but I'm logged in now as a student. And I can be logged in with the same Google account as a student and as a teacher at the same time. So it's not like, oh, I have to like go incognito or I have to like log in with a different Google account, none of that. And so that's how I do it. Then I use a drawing question type on all the slides that I want to be able to ink up. Again, if you forget to add any interactivity to a question like this one, I didn't add interactivity, and then I'm in class and I'm like, oh, I really wanted to write on that slide. You just use the new prompt and you go to the last screen and you just make sure that it's a drawing type. That's it. So usually though, when I'm building, I make everything a drawing type. So all you do is you click on this drawing, and then it's going to add this bottom bar. And it takes a minute, like you can see it. And then now it's a drawing type slide. But because it takes a minute, you can just copy and paste the bottom bar onto all your slides, and then everything becomes a drawing slide. And so that's what I do. All of mine are drawing type slides. And if this, you cannot delete this bottom bar, but if it gets in your way, you can actually move it off the screen and it still holds interactivity onto this question. It's just, you can't delete this. That would mess everything up. Just so you leave it and take it off the screen so that it doesn't show. All right. I'm going to get into questions very soon, but first I want to just give you a moment to jot down any key takeaways. If there's something that you think that you can implement right away, any ideas that this has sparked. I'm also at this moment going to move you. I've been moving you in instructor pace. I'm going to move you to student pace so that you can take a couple minutes to do this. You can also find a code to get 90 days of Pear Deck if you want to experiment with the premium and you have not done that before. And if you want to ask any questions right here, that is available to you. But if you want to use the Zoom, that's available to you also. Doug will be getting back on and asking me some of those questions that have come in. And then the last slide is just as a resource for you. A bunch of the tutorials that I've made Pear Deck specific are on the slide. So anything that can be useful to you, you'll find some ideas here. So that's a resource that's available to you. So those are the ending slides. I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes to write some takeaways, jot down some reflections, maybe ask some questions in the Q&A. And we'll start the Q&A in 2 minutes. So I'll give everybody just a couple moments to summarize what they're thinking.
Great. And while people are summarizing, I have a couple of questions for you, Stacey.
All right. Should we give everybody like just 1 more minute to think before we start talking?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I can throw a few questions at you while you're waiting.
Sure.
Okay. Somebody asked about the precision of writing with a Wacom tablet versus using a touch screen. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep. Should we start with that one?
Sure.
Okay. So it's like the precision of the tablet and also just the smoothness of the writing are two big things to consider when you're getting a Wacom tablet. So any of these 3 devices that I've shown you are a very smooth and precise writing experience. So having had a chance to play with various different types of tablets, different types of pens versus the Wacom tablet, that's like one of my main takeaways, is that the handwriting experience with the Wacom tablet is extremely smooth and extremely precise. And you're not going to find that, I don't think that you'll find that in another device. And, you know, keep in mind that a lot of these devices have been made for like artists. And so, you know, as a math teacher, like this exceeds even what I need, but it's such a pleasant writing experience. And it's a very like, it's not jaggedy at all. If you've used a tablet that is a very inexpensive tablet, you may have, or an inexpensive pen with a Chromebook, you may have, you know, seen that your pen is skipping, or that like when you're writing a zero, that it's jaggedy and not super smooth. And so that's a main difference with the Wacom tablet in my experience, is that it's a very smooth, precise writing experience. For my AP Calculus class, for example, like we wouldn't really be able to do this with a touch screen because they need to be able to write like integrals and exponents and subscripts, and it just would be too much for them to be able to do with their finger or a thick, you know, pen or anything. So I need that precision. But, you know, if you had younger students, maybe you could have the Wacom tablet so that you could write more easily and all that, but students would still be fine with just a touch screen. There's definitely a lot of classrooms that I get to work with where students are fine with the touch screen. You know, like they're doing just basics or they're doing geometry and just need to draw a shape, but the teacher needs more of the precision. So I think those are things to think about.
Great. And here's another one. We all know that the pandemic has put a huge emphasis on remote learning, but how would you, or how do you incorporate Pear Deck into a hybrid environment, or even when you're back into in-person teaching?
Yeah, great question. So Pear Deck for me is so much more than remote teaching. I have been using Pear Deck since ever since Pear Deck started, actually. So it's been a lot of years now. Because what I was looking for, so I'll take you back to what I was looking for. I was looking for a way to be able to really allow every student in my classroom to contribute their thoughts. Not just a person who is going to raise their hand, not just the first person who's going to chime in. I want to see and hear from every single student in the classroom. And through Pear Deck, I can ask a question and give everybody think time. So that's why even right now, like I wanted to give you all a minute to be able to write out your thoughts. Like we need to give people think at different paces. I like to think and process before I'm ready to raise my hand. I was never, as a student, the first one to chime in. Even though I was thinking stuff, I just didn't know how to get it out of my head. And orally contributing wasn't the best means for me. So how can I, like I said at the beginning, how can I showcase all different student work on the board? And maybe the person who then raises their hand is somebody different than who had written on the Pear Deck. Isn't that wonderful? Or that I can show all the different answers, like that silly grammar challenge. I can easily just show all the different ways that people were thinking before the first person answered, and then influences how everybody else thinks. So how do we allow everybody to get their thoughts onto paper, onto the computer screen, whatever it may be, and then pull that all up to the projector at the front of the room so that we can see and celebrate how different students are thinking. We can celebrate even incorrect answers and talk about why that was a valuable way of thinking through it and maybe where they went wrong in that process. So to me, yes, it's a lifesaver in remote learning. So I hope that more people have utilized Pear Deck because it's like actually like a lifesaver. But to me, it's something that we would use all the time, way beyond the pandemic. In the classroom, it's way more valuable than for remote teaching because we actually have students in the classroom. And for the students who aren't like, because not everybody's best voice or best thoughts are going to shine on the Pear Deck. And now in the classroom, I'm going to be able to call on them more fluidly, like I'm able to normally in a classroom. So Yeah, I hope I answered that. I obviously have a lot of feelings on this one.
No, you answered that well. And Diana Roden has two questions. She's from Canada, so I'll answer her. I'll answer her first question. She's asking where she can get a Wacom Intuos tablet in Canada. And Diana, you can definitely get one at Best Buy in Canada. They carry the product everywhere. So that's probably the best place to go if there's a Best Buy near you. And then she also has a question about the slides you just showed. Um, uh, can you share? Is there a way to find out how? Her question is a little convoluted, but she says, "How do we get a copy of these slides, i.e., ending slides with the info just shown?" So I think she's looking for the administrative data that is in your slides there.
I think actually she just wants that last slide with all of this, maybe. So
that's possible.
Yes, if you joined the Pear Deck already, when I close this session, then you will get a copy of all the slides, because as soon as I end it, you're going to get a copy of everything that you've done today. That's why you had to sign in with your Google account. If you didn't join, though, I can send the slides to anybody who wants them. So yes, I think that's what we'll do. I can just send them. If you can contact me through, you'll find my email on my blog. So let me put that up there again. So just go ahead and find my email on there and contact me, and I can send you a copy of the slides if you didn't join the Pear Deck.
Okay, great. Yeah. And then Jim Brown is getting in touch with us. I think he was at our last webinar as well.
Yeah.
Jim, to answer your pen question, why don't you write to me at douglas.little@wacom.com, because that's something probably Stacey can't answer. He has a question about kind of how the tech works and things like that. So he might want to just get in touch with me. So just write to me, Jim, and I'll help you out.
Awesome.
And yeah, that's pretty much it for questions, Stacey. I don't see any others. So I don't know if you want to do a little wrap up here, and we'll let you go for the evening.
All right, let me answer the couple that I see that came in through the Pear Deck. So sure. Our Wacom Tablet's compatible with Macbooks. So yes, I'm using a Mac today. So yes, they're compatible. So all of them are compatible with a Mac or a PC. If you have a Chromebook, that is the one that you need the one by Wacom from. So that's the one that had the red backing. So that's how you can identify it. Okay. So, but otherwise they are compatible with a Mac and a PC. And that's actually the beauty to me of using the Wacom tablets, because you can use any of the applications that you're already familiar with and you're already loving on your Mac or on your PC. And now you have the pen precision. So that's great. Any advice or tips on making interactive slides and things to consider when making them? So I am super simple about making my slides, because for me, I'm usually just drawing all over it. So my slides are like, I put the question at the top and then I leave as much blank white space as I can, because I want to be able to write and I want my students to be able to write. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but like this is literally how I make most of my slides for my class. So you can see that I just have like the title and then I have the question, and then most of it is blank white space so that all of us can be writing and inking it up. But another great thing to do is, like, if you have like a question from like a workbook, fill in the blank even. So I was making some Pear Decks and playing around with my niece who's in first grade right now. And so like I found a couple of cute little worksheets, and I just took screenshots of them, and then I put the screenshot into my Google Slides, and then I made it a drawing type slide so that she could fill in the blanks and that she could just write on any of the slides there. That was really fun to do. So yeah, it's great for so many different things. Also, if you are doing like the question types that are like a text question type, then you can fill up the whole entire space on the slide, because the text question is going to just be side by side. So it's going to look like this. So in that case, you don't need to leave retail space. You don't need to leave drawing space. And those are just the things that I would consider, is like, what is the student view going to look like when you design this slide? Is it going to be one where you are going to have the question on the side? And that would be for, oops, let me go back. That would be for a text slide type, a choice number. But if you're going to do a draw or a draggable, just be aware that all that's happening on the slide. So make sure that it's not too busy, the slide itself. Hopefully that helps. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? Go ahead, and if you had anything else, you can leave it here. Otherwise, we will definitely wrap up. Let me see if I had any questions on this one. Yes, the Wacom One has been a game changer for teaching math. I agree. I don't know where I would be without this. Yes, so one thing this person contributed, which is great, is that yes, a new feature is that you can add a co-teacher into Pear Deck. So if you are teaching with somebody else, there is now the ability to add a co-teacher. So that is new. That is really nice. Good, being able to add it on the fly. Yes, and you can move it off. I'm glad you learned that. Great. Use the open text response prompt as a bell ringer to ask students how their day went. This is such an important point, and I want to close on this one because I love this of like, yes, remembering to check in with the students, like use the question types that Pear Deck has in there. They've definitely helped me become a better teacher. So use the template library, the beginning of the lesson, go ahead and do a little check-in with them. How are you feeling? What do you wonder? What's going on? Make use of these slide types. There's also some great SEL ones. So go ahead and look at the social emotional learning ones and see what's on there, how you might want to pull this in. You can pull this in, this question type, and you don't want to ask the same question every day. You can modify it though. You can modify any of the text that's on this slide. You can use some of the beautiful illustrations that Pear Deck has already provided there. So maybe instead of what is filling your bucket today and what's draining it, you could change the question. You can change any of the text on the slide, no problem at all. Again, this bottom bar is what's telling it it's going to be a drawing slide type. So anything you want to change, you can change any of the text. But definitely, I encourage you to use some of these slide types to remember to just ask those little questions. How are you doing today? Is everything going okay? And you can get really nice insight into how students are feeling, and they don't have to, tell you that verbally. They might feel more comfortable just telling it to you on the slide. So I am going to close on that one. Well, can kids control the screen? No, they can't. So I'll just throw that one in. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I really do appreciate it. And don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions that are more teacher specific, and Doug if you have any questions that are more Wacom specific. So thank you again.
Yep. Thanks for joining, everybody. We appreciate it. And Stacey will be on next week as well. So please come back on the 24th because we'll be doing another webinar on Cami, which is another great software application. So join us then. Thanks, everybody, for coming this evening. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.